Hello again, everyone. This is Steve Callis, speaking of sports. We're here to talk about the late, great Elgin Baylor, who died a couple of days ago at the age of 86 of natural causes. Baylor really is one of the greatest players who ever played. It's kind of incredible. Every article you're reading now is telling you how great he was and what a legend he was. And you probably haven't heard his name mentioned in months or years, even, because he just is the most unheralded superstar of all time. And I just want to give you a quote from Oscar Roberts since it started off. Many of you know I think Oscar is still the greatest player who ever lived. But here's what he said about Elgin Baylor, quote, "You could not stop Elgin from driving to the basket. You sure couldn't outjump him or hang in the air any longer than he did. Elgin was the first and original high flyer." And truer words were never spoken. Elgin is before Dr. J. He was doing Dr. J moves before Dr. J. In fact, I would say Dr. J was doing Elgin Baylor moves when he came into the league. And of course, he started in the ABA where he was a high flyer. Uh, Michael Jordan's moves look a lot like Elgin Baylor's moves. I throw in Connie Hawkins. Nobody's mentioned him. Connie Hawkins, of course, was bigger, but he was an acrobat in his own right. And I think he really was the original guy. And frankly, kind of got left for a number of reasons. You may have heard that they finally gave him a statue. When? He retired in 71 during the 71-72 season. They put a statue up 2018. I mean, come on. They put up Magic and Kareem. They put up West. They put up Shaq. They even put up Chick Hearn, the announcer. They just got around to Elgin Baylor. Now, some of you will say he never won a championship, and that's true. That is true. He also had to play against the Bill Russell Celtics. So West and Baylor together, they never could beat him. And in fact, when Baylor retired in 70, 71, we're going to talk a little bit about injuries because I just want you to understand his greatness. In 70, 71, he tore his Achilles, missed the season, played 2 games and then missed the rest of the season. Came back in 71, 72 when the Lakers would finally win the title, played 9 games and retired. He wasn't remotely Elgin Baylor. And of course, as you probably know, the Lakers went on to win 33 games in a row and finally win a championship for Jerry West, who to this day and even this week said, I'm so disappointed that Elgin didn't win that with us, but he had to retire. He was so injured. But I wanted to tell you about the greatness of Elgin Baylor. And the analogy I'll give you for you baseball guys is Joe Dimaggio. You look at Dimaggio's first 5 years before he went into World War II, and maybe the greatest 5 years in baseball history. When he came back, yes, he missed time because of World War II, but he also had terrible heel problems, which led to his, frankly, somewhat early retirement in 1951. But I'm going to read you just 4 years of Baylor. When he came into the league, he played for the Minneapolis Lakers. Some of you don't know the Los Angeles Lakers are called the Lakers because they were the Minneapolis Lakers, where you had the Great Lakes, of course. That's why they're called the Lakers, believe it or not. But in any event, he played 2 seasons in Minneapolis. The first year he was Rookie of the Year, and he would have a bad, I'm just joking, season compared to what he would have after this. His first year, he averaged 25 and 15 rebounds. In the playoffs, he averaged 25.5 and 12 rebounds. And then he went on one of the greatest 4-year runs in the history of the NBA. Nobody knows this stuff. And I admit, I knew he was great and I knew he got hurt, but I didn't know this stuff. I'm going to read you his per game averages for the next 4 seasons. 29.6 and 16 rebounds, 34.8 and 19.8 rebounds, 38.3 and 18.6 rebounds, and 34 points and 14.3 rebounds per game. That's over a 4-year stretch. It's a video game. I think the only guy maybe you could find who compared to him 4 years in a row is probably Wilt, but nobody in the modern era was anything like this. So you might say, well, how'd he do in the playoffs? Even though they didn't win the title, here's what he did in the playoffs. He averaged, this is from 59-60 through 62-63. He averaged 33.4 points a game and 14 rebounds, 38 points a game and 15.3 rebounds, 38.6 points a game and 17.7 rebounds, and 32.6 points per game and 13.6 rebounds. Why do I say all of that? Those 4 years combined. In the playoffs, he led the NBA in scoring in all 4 years. all 4 years. I don't know if that's ever been done, even by Wilt. But I'm just trying to give you, because the year after that, he hurt his knee. And the year after that, he blew out his knee in the Western Conference finals in the playoffs. And he was never the same. He was still great, but he never averaged over 27.1 points per game, and he never averaged 13 rebounds or more. So understand there's two levels of greatness. There's almost the video game top 4 or 5 player of all time, first 5 years of Elgin Baylor, like Joe Dimaggio, I think. And then the rest of his career where he fought through knee injuries, torn Achilles, and eventually retired. I just want to give you that background. But there was a lot more to Elgin Baylor, just that, yes, he didn't win a championship. I think he's the greatest player never to win a championship. You might say Malone or Stockton or Barkley. I don't think so. But in any event, post-career, he really did do some important things. He didn't do well as a coach of the New Orleans Jazz. And look, there's that old saying, great players just don't make great coaches. And you can go down the list, including Jerry West, Magic Johnson, et cetera. But then he became the GM of the Clippers and was there for about 20 years. Unfortunately, he was working for Don Sterling, who today everybody knows was an incredible racist. Elgin Baylor actually filed a lawsuit against Sterling and the NBA when he was fired, because he claimed that Sterling was a racist, that he wouldn't pay him. He froze his pay at $350,000 for a number of years, and he gave his new white coach, Mike Dunleavy, eventually he got like a 4 or 5 year contract for $22 million. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to see the disparity there. He brought a lawsuit that actually failed. And ironically, 3 years later, Donald Sterling was kicked out of the NBA. Why? For being a racist. Some of you will recall the tape that he was taped saying racist things and making racist remarks. Baylor had alleged all of that in his lawsuit. And it was really kind of sad, actually. The only comment Baylor had when they asked him after Sterling was kicked out of the league was, everything I said in my lawsuit was true, which included things like, I wanted to pay a bunch of poor black boys and then have a white coach on the team, stuff like that. So it's very sad he didn't get his justice, but he kind of was a civil rights guy in his own way. In fact, early on in his NBA career, they played a game at a neutral site. I forget what city. I wish I remembered. Baylor couldn't stay in the White Hotel with the players. He refused to play in the game, and he didn't play in the game. So he really is a pioneer on a number of levels. Jerry West, who is the logo and as big a superstar as Baylor, has always talked about, and especially this week, if you've read the papers, has always talked about how great Baylor was to him. Baylor was already a king when West showed up in Baylor's year 3. And they were a dynamic duo, one of the greatest duos of all time. But West always talked about how Baylor never big-timed him, always took him under his wing, always took him out to dinner, always helped him. And he made the transition from college to Olympian to superstar much easier. And even Jerry West said, there are a lot of reasons I got a lot of open jump shots, and it's because Baylor was doing his dipsy-do and moves to the basket, and he would pass it over to Jerry West for open jumpers. Think of what West could have been with the three-point line. There's a few other things I want to give to you stat-wise, which, again, there's a number of lists, and this is the most incredible list I've ever seen. And feel free to write in when this is posted on YouTube and tell me if you've got a better one. The top 10 rebounders per game and the top 10 scorers per game average per game, entire career. There's only 3 guys in the history of basketball who are on that top 10 list. One is Wilt Chamberlain, of course. Stat-wise, nobody can see Wilt Chamberlain. Another one is Bob Pettit. You want to talk about a forgotten superstar? But the third one is Elgin Baylor. Now, Elgin Baylor, if you went around and asked 100 NBA fans today, give me the top 3 average per game scorers of all time, everyone would say, oh, it's either Wilt and Jordan or Jordan and Wilt. It's Jordan by a very little bit. But Elgin Baylor averaged 27.6 points per game. He's third. The guys behind him, the immediate 3 guys behind him, just so you know, to give it to modern day fans, I just want to read them out to you in the order that they're in. Um, Kevin Durant is right behind him. He's behind him, but he's right behind him. Jerry West is behind him, and LeBron James is behind him. This is Elgin Baylor. Who knows about this for Elgin Baylor? So there are just a number of incredible feats that he had. I'll give you another one I didn't know. There's only 5 guys in the history of the NBA to average 40 minutes per game. Think about it. If somebody plays 40 minutes per game in the 48-minute NBA game today, oh my goodness, he's playing so much. The list is Wilt, Russell, Oscar. For all you Allen Iverson fans, you should love Iverson for a lot of reasons. But little Allen Iverson played over 40 minutes a game, and Baylor is 5th at just over 40 minutes per game. These are unheard of stats, all for one guy. I'm focusing on Baylor now, obviously. Finally, in rebounds, Elgin Baylor is 10th all time on the rebound list. And here are the 3 guys behind him: Dennis Rodman, Willis Reed, and for you old-time Bullet fans, Gus Johnson. I'm out of lists now to try and explain this guy's greatness. But to sum up, 86, to me nowadays is a pretty good run. But he was, according to West, even a better human being than he was a player, which is just, again, unfathomable. If you go look at his stats at Basketball Reference, you'll see that drop off. I'll put an asterisk. He hurt his knee badly this year, and he hurt it so bad the next year he needed surgery. Or at the end of his career, he tore his Achilles. You just don't really find that unless you know about it. I kind of knew about his injuries, but I did not know most of these stats on these lists I just read off. So Elgin Baylor, the first high flyer. Magic Johnson said Elgin Baylor was Showtime before Showtime. Everybody knows about the Showtime Lakers with Magic and Worthy, Kareem. But even Magic admitted Baylor was Showtime before Showtime in Los Angeles. One final thought on Baylor. According to the owner of the Minneapolis Lakers at the time, I wish I could remember his name, because he drafted Baylor #1 and Baylor came to Minnesota to play, he had been a Seattle All-American. He was so good that when Seattle lost in the championship game to Kentucky, who was an incredible powerhouse back then, Elgin Baylor got the most outstanding player award in the NCAA. Incredible. But the owner of the Lakers, the Minneapolis Lakers, when they moved to Los Angeles, they quoted him as saying, "If I didn't draft Elgin Baylor, if he didn't come play here, the Minneapolis Lakers would have folded before they went to Los Angeles." You Laker fans, give that some thought. So Elgin Baylor, to me, to this day, one of the 10 or 15 greatest players of all time. In his day, one of the greatest players, 2 or 3 players. And it's the old, if he had stayed healthy, knee surgery in 1965, I don't think quite got it done as it did today. And again, also torn Achilles. I read an article about people came back from torn Achilles and they put Baylor as a failure. Yeah, but he tore his Achilles like in 1971. So it would be incredible to know what he would have done. I read you the 4 seasons he had, which again are part of the greatest 4-year spans in the history of the NBA. So Elgin Baylor, by all accounts, one of the greatest players ever, and an even greater human being. He'll be missed. This is Steve Callis speaking of sports. We'll see you the next time.